Mandatory. Listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back with another episode, Mandatory Listening.
Back.
This is episode 7?
7.
Whoa, man. Listen, I just want to say thank you, Dan. Like, this has been a real cool anchor to the week, you know?
Yeah, it's been a highlight of my week the last 7 weeks.
I don't know about highlight, but it's definitely there every week.
Oh, no. Not a highlight, huh? Okay, all right.
No, I'm just saying it's an anchor. That's what I'm saying.
It's currently a highlight for me this week because the past few days I've been quarantined in my house because I came in contact with someone.
Walked into the gas station with no mask on.
Yeah, it was a church, but same difference.
Oh, so now we're worshiping God, no mask. Gotcha.
I'm taking blame, but still just been sitting in the house the past 3 days, and I'm really glad to see another face and talk about music.
Serves you right.
Like I said, really glad to see another friend.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I wanted to bring this one thing up before we get into it. I am not proud of my giggle. I don't like that I giggle on this podcast.
Giggle.
I do. I'm just like, I don't like that.
No man should have too good a giggle.
We shouldn't have like good giggles. I'm just over here giggling. I was watching the last episode. I was just appalled. I was like, wow. I know, like during the day I chop wood and lay bricks, and then I come on this podcast and giggle.
I'm eating steaks and drinking
steaks
beer. And I want to know, what album are we talking about today, Aaron?
Today we are talking about the 1984 classic album by the Chaka Khan. I Feel For You.
I Feel For You.
I Feel For You.
I Feel For You came out October 1st, 1984.
Yeah.
Once again, my shout out to my parents. It was my parents' senior year of high school. And how
do they feel about you giving them their age every podcast? Like, I purposely skipped over that whenever I was talking about my mom the last podcast. I was like, my mom, high schoolish.
Yeah, right. Maybe even middle school. I'm not exactly sure.
Elementary school, they did the grades different back then, you know.
So this was her 5th studio album, but her 5th solo album. So she had a lot of other albums with what band?
Rufus.
Yes. So I was only familiar with a couple of her songs, and they were really Rufus
just her
songs.
Oh, okay. Her songs in general?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Without giving it away, after hearing the album this time, is it like, let's listen to the album this week. Is there a song that you were like, oh, I know that song?
Not one.
Okay. There's definitely one that you should know. Maybe you don't, but
can I guess which one that is?
Sure.
Through the Fire?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know why you should know that one?
Yeah.
Okay, dang.
Yeah.
Dang, that's gonna be my 3-on-3. I'm trying to collect 3-on-3s as we go.
Yeah, right.
I was like, okay, keep that one.
All right, so whatever he doesn't know, that's going to be my 3-on-3.
Yeah.
That's your strategy.
When was her birthday?
Like I said, I only knew a couple of Rufus songs. Tell Me Something Good.
Quick note, just before I forget, okay?
Okay.
But when you edit out those. So just edit those out and get like straight to the thing, because it feels tiresome after a while. Like if you keep, because we literally do that after every banter. Like we're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Just like come right in on the action. Okay.
So yeah. Wait, let me try
That was a giggle.
Tell Me Something Good. Tell Me Something Good.
Yep.
And Sweet Thing.
Okay, yeah. Those are like Red Piano classics.
Yeah. Shout out to the now defunct Red Piano Lounge in Knoxville, Tennessee.
What a sad state of affairs. There are a lot of songs that I knew of hers just in culture. It's like when I hear it, I'm like, oh, I know that song. When I hear
ones of hers with Rufus or her solo stuff?
Both. Like Through the Fire, I definitely knew it was her song. I Feel For You, I heard her version of it, although I also heard another version of it. We'll talk about that too. Eye to Eye, I don't know how I know that song, but every time I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, that song.
I will say though, I will say, like, I didn't recognize any individual song, but the whole like sound of the album reminded
we'll
me.
Talk about that.
Yeah, it just reminded me of like being in the mall, and like I used to go get my hair cut in the mall when I was a kid.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't.
So
remember
is the mall music just 20 years off? You know, like
yeah, I think because that would have been like 2004.
So like in 2035, like the Migos, like Migos is gonna be bopping.
Yeah, so let's see. Right now they're playing like NSYNC in there. That makes that. Yeah,
I mean,
that's about
true.
right.
Britney Spears. Like,
there you go. Yep. So I was probably
John
listening
Mayer.
to this album when I was getting a haircut when I was like 8 years old.
Bro, we are getting talking about hairdressers and a mall. We're talking about.
It was just the intro.
So okay, so you knew a couple of songs that weren't actually her songs; they're Rufus songs,
right?
Here's a song that you know of her that you probably didn't know you knew. It starts with an A.
I know which one you're talking about, but I can't think of it.
It's actually a Rufus song.
Ain't Nobody?
Yeah. Can't nobody do me better. Can't nobody make me feel this way. Ain't nobody.
Maybe. I don't know. The only two that I was like for sure was Sweet Thing and Tell Me Something Good.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to do a whole concert there. But like when it goes to this part, that's forever. Whoa, ho, 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 can't nobody. No, still nothing.
That's a great rendition, but I don't know if I.
Cool. So you had a blank slate, which was cool. Same kind of similar to how I had with Paul.
Yep.
Well, let's just go to the hook. This is the first album that she did, like not also being in the band with Rufus. So we're talking about, I mean, we're going to go into context in a second, but basically she was a kid. She, in her teenage years, kind of started doing stuff with Rufus. She did Rufus for a while. Then she also started a solo career in the like the late 70s. She's also doing Rufus and the solo career thing. And this album is right. This album is like the first album where she's no longer in Rufus, but she's still doing her own solo thing. And so it's kind of a weird time. Honestly, I think it's a weird time for her. And we'll talk about this more later, but I think it's a weird time for her because they are like in the middle of the 80s.
Yeah.
like there's no, like, you can't go backwards, you can't go forwards yet. It's like we're just here now, so we just got to be a part of the 80s.
The 80s are becoming the 80s, not just in music, but the 70s or any decade that you're going into a decade in like 1981, 1982, you're still getting like carryover from the late 70s culture.
Right.
But by 83, 84, it's like, okay, now we're in.
Like confidently here. Yeah, basically the hook of this album is just her. This is her establishing herself as, hey, this is just me now. There's no extra, there's no extra people in the background. I mean, she had her own band, she had her own backup singers, but this is just me,
Right.
If I remember correctly, this is her most successful album as a solo act.
It was, it was her most successful. Like, it sold the most. She had some success definitely with her earlier solo albums while she was also still in Rufus.
Yeah.
But I think it probably helped that it was kind of like, okay, now this is all I'm doing, and all of my energy is getting put into this.
Yeah.
And I'm not splitting work and time between two different projects. So yeah, my hook was first of all kind of a ripoff, and secondly, nice. More based on, like, I guess, the sound of the album.
Yeah.
This is from Don Snowden of the Boston Phoenix in November 1984.
This is not WikiLeaks.
I thought this was just. I thought this was this was such a good, like, summary of how I felt about it when I listened to the album as a whole. So he said, producer Arif Mardin constructed a glistening metallic edifice of sound, true metal machine music for life and love in high-rise apartments where silk sheets and polished chrome dominate the decor.
Oh, shoot.
I was like,
that is really great.
Yeah. So my hook is silk sheets and polished chrome because that's just like, I feel that when I listen to this, it's very like
the funny thing. The funny thing is when you say that sentence, the high rise, like expensive taste, like high taste, it kind of puts the album in a different light for me in my head, and I'm like, oh, I get that a little bit more.
Anyway, that's my hook is like silk sheets, which is kind of like, okay, there's still some kind of like bedroom material in this album.
It definitely is.
But it's like elegant in a way.
That's great.
Yeah. So shout out to Don Snowden of the Boston Phoenix. Let's get to the context. Yvette Marie Stevens was born in 1953, and she was born and raised in Chicago. And of course, we are talking about Chaka Khan, but her birth name is Yvette Stevens.
Yeah. So actually, Chaka is her Yoruba name. You know, it's like a name that was given to her, from, I think it's from the Yoruba tribe, and she was telling the story about how they used to come to different cities in America and basically just do ceremonies, and she named her, not the Yoruba tribe men, whoever it was, named her Chaka. It was actually a longer name.
Yeah, it was a long name that did not include Khan, because we'll get to that later. But the first name Chaka was part of that, and it was like what they call a Yoruba Baba, which is like a priest figure. Of this tribe. Yeah,
and she was like 12. If my memory serves me correctly, she was like 12 when that happened.
Okay.
So like that's kind of where she gets that part of it from. I think it means warrior. It means war. There's a lot of names. It was like 5 or 6, but like I think Chaka means warrior.
Okay, cool.
Which is like she dresses like a warrior. If you watch her,
right
in like the 80s and on, you know.
Yeah, like stage attire. Yeah. Or even just everyday attire, I guess.
Yeah, just Chaka attire.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was Yvette, changed to Chaka to keep going.
Yep, changed to Chaka, and like I said, born and raised in Chicago, and kind of had like a normal upbringing in terms of listening to music, like not normal all the way, but she was introduced to jazz as a kid, like from her grandmother.
Yeah.
And then when she was kind of more growing up, like preteen, she got into R&B, and she and her sister formed this like girl group called the Crystalettes, which is like the perfect name for that era, right?
Do you want to know the name of my first band?
Oh man, what is it?
The Three Witnesses.
Bro, my first band was also a Christian name. And we literally just opened to a page in the Bible, and you know how they have in your defense, section.
In your defense, every like Christian documentary, they're like, we were just in the basement and we were speaking to the Lord, and we just opened the Bible and it said, third day.
Well, that's a great third day makes sense. Unfortunately, we didn't have that foresight. And another shout out to subscriber and longtime friend Sean Adams.
Oh, Sean was in your first band?
Oh yeah, man. Sean and I started a band, and we called it Test the Spirits. It really doesn't even like, we just kind of thought, oh, okay, that's like a section header in like this book of the Bible. I forget what it was. And like, that just sounds, it sounds kind of like.
That's actually kind of cool though. Like, that's actually kind of cool. It's
cool if you're not a Christian band and you're just a band.
Yeah. If you're just a band and you're like, Test the Spirits, nice.
Yeah, it was very like, I mean, we were like 12 or 13 around that time, and we were
ever do any shows?
No. Yeah, we tried to like, we kept talking to our friend's cousin who had a studio, and he was gonna like record us. That never happened. We never even tried to
think about, right? It's fun to think about, though.
So fun to think about. So anyway, she and her sister, Chaka and her sister, you know, they were like the Crystalettes, but that's not necessarily like an official thing. Like we talk about Stevie Wonder, you know, he was doing stuff when he was 11. Like that wasn't necessarily her story yet.
But that group definitely, like, they did a bunch of talent shows. Like they were doing stuff with, they were doing talent shows, and like, I can't remember the names of the other groups. Was it like the Emotions or something?
I don't know if I ever saw the other groups.
There's another female group in Chicago that they were doing talent shows with that ended up signing with like Motown or Stax or something like that.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, you know, it wasn't like a thing, but it was a thing, you know.
Hey, like I said, they nailed the name. Like if all you needed to get a Motown deal was the name, they would have gotten it.
Yeah, Crystalettes.
Yeah.
Just put an on anything.
Yeah, for real, honestly. So then like
nets.
Later into like kind of, you know, she's starting to become a teenager. She's becoming more involved in civil rights and the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And the biggest kind of point to make here is that she joined the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
And she like had befriended someone who was in them and kind of just got into that. And she was still like early high school, I think, at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Which that was like a common thing. Like a lot of people's parents, Black Panthers. I know people that were Black Panthers back in the day. There was a lot of Black people in Chicago because people that moved from the South, like when we talk about the Great Migration that happened into Chicago, Detroit. That's why in the Midwest we get all these stories from these Black artists. It's either the South or the Midwest, you know.
Yeah, Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about someone who was born in 1953, you know, that means their parents were born in the 1920s, maybe, and that means their parents were born literally in the 1800s. So we're getting closer and closer to slavery, and especially the Jim Crow era when we talk about these artists and their families that they grew up with. It's really important to kind of think about that context too, like just the country's context.
Now, did you ever get to do any type of like get info on her family, like how they were living? I know that they kind of briefly mentioned in some of like the interviews that they didn't really have like you said they had a normal upbringing, normal musical upbringing, but their family kind of was like, I don't really remember exactly. I know that they like, yeah. Did you get anything on that?
Yeah, only a little bit. I kind of just understood that, like we alluded to, it wasn't a normal upbringing in that they were almost like bohemian in like kind of their like in their spirituality and like maybe not following certain cultural trends, you know, and if that even manifests itself in like how you dress or how you're talking. It's not really, I don't think it was necessarily like they were part of something that was specifically guiding everything they did. It was just kind of like it was almost like
it was like loose. That's kind of the
loose,
idea. And I don't want to speak on it too much because I haven't done enough research. But when I listen to her talk about it, it just sounds like it was kind of like, do whatever. Just do whatever you want, you know.
That's how it sounds to me. And like I said, I didn't really get into any details with her family. Like I don't even know much about her parents. But yeah, it was kind of just loose and almost like countercultural in a way, you know. So it could be boiled down for our purposes in just like not a normal upbringing. So that was a pretty bad way for me to phrase it earlier. But
you said normal musical, so that was
fine. Musical. So
one of the things you mentioned about her grandmother putting her onto jazz, which I think is a good point for me to kind of bring up here, is that she did put her onto jazz, and she talks about the story about how her mom gave her a Billie Holiday record, and her grandmother gave her a Billie Holiday record, and she basically kind of fell in love with it and like really tried to mimic exactly what she was doing. And I think this is important because it's going to be like a through line through her career, that she is like kind of always has one foot in like the jazz world, you know. Always kind of like put in the category with these guys because people always say that she sings like a horn player. Like,
yeah,
her lines and just like the way that she sings is like a horn player as opposed to a just like a normal vocalist. So I think that the jazz influence definitely has a lot to do with that. And a big part of like a big like milestone for her was like the bebop medley. You ever heard of this?
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's where she basically Ari put this arrangement together of like 4 or 5 bebop songs, and she basically sings them all and put words to bebop songs.
Wow,
like
that's crazy.
Confirmation, like me and Dan are doing a podcast on mandatory listening.
Yeah,
but she's like nailing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and she's like putting her own words to it, so it's kind of interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I should listen to it, and that's kind of the like you said, through line of her career in terms of, she was never, and maybe she was never trying to be like Whitney Houston or some of these pop acts that we've talked about recently and that we see a little bit later on into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Having like extreme success as far as selling records and chart success and awards. And it wasn't that she wasn't awarded and didn't have success. She definitely did. But I almost feel like she wasn't trying to, okay, no matter what, I'm just going to be a pop artist. Like it was like, first it was kind of like with Rufus, it was more in the kind of funk and R&B land. Right. And then, this album is definitely an example of pop sensibilities being there. But I mean, there's still a lot of soul in it, and there's, R&B in it for sure, like in the ballads. And then like, I'm not as familiar with her stuff after this album, but anyway, I've heard about her being kind of considered almost musician, having a foot in the jazz world,
Yeah, you're right. She's not always, she was never like the biggest pop star, but in my head and in like my upbringing, she was always recognized as like one of the people. As a matter of fact, like when I think of like the 3 female voices in like 70s, like people always talk about like Aretha Franklin, Chaka Khan, and like Patti LaBelle. Like all these people were like in the same like group, like of people, So she's always like maybe I don't know. She's just always there to me. I don't want to discredit that part of her at all.
Yeah. And I like, again, I want to be very clear. Like, I think it's cool that she didn't necessarily like she wasn't trying to like, only have number 1 hits or whatever. Exactly. And, we'll look at that more with the album too. But to continue on with like context and stuff, when she was 16, she left the Black Panthers and she dropped out of high school. Yep. And so now she was kind of like focused on just playing around Chicago, performing. She was doing that with various groups, one of which was Cash McCall's group Life, spelled Lyfe. Yeah. And that's how she met her first husband.
Oh, okay. She talks about how what was her husband's name? Do you know?
Her husband's name was Hassan Khan.
Okay.
And they married in 1970, which means that she was 17.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he was, but so that's how they met was through the band Life that she was kind of singing with sometimes.
She talks about how she was doing that band Life in like this club in Chicago, and she would be doing her thing with that band, and then when they had a break, they would go across the street and see this other band named Rufus. And they had another singer at the time, which was Paula something.
Pauline.
Paul. I don't want to. I can't disrespect my elders like this. Okay. Paulette McWilliams. My apologies.
Paulette McWilliams.
Yeah. So basically, what happened was Paulette left eventually, and I've heard 2 stories that she asked Chaka to like, be in the band, and then also I just have one where they asked her, like the band just asked her to be on. But either way, it happened. She ended up being in this band called Rufus. Yeah, and that happened in
1972.
1972.
Yep. And so yeah, once they kind of had their configuration of the band, including Chaka,
Right.
it wasn't too much longer until Ike Turner kind of heard about them, and they caught his attention. So this is Ike, of course, of Ike and Tina Turner, and Ike Turner kind of flew them out to, well, not kind of, he flew them out to L.A. and recorded them at his studio in Inglewood. And I think specifically with Chaka, he was kind of almost courting her to be an Ikette. Like,
yeah, that's definitely what she was telling. That's definitely what she said. She's like, yeah, he wanted me to be an Ikette. Like, he wanted me to be in his band. And like, to her credit, she was like, no, I committed to these guys, and I just really want to like see that through.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I almost always want to bring up age when we talk about these decisions, because I mean, it's we've seen this already with various artists and like the decisions that they make at young ages. Like, she was 19, 20 at this time, and she's choosing not an unknown band, but basically a local Chicago band over someone more established like Ike Turner.
Right.
And she, I think you could say like she had a certain vision of what she wanted to do with Rufus and like what she saw in them, and was like, I'd rather do this. And that's really cool, especially because it worked out in her favor. But
basically they were kind of like you said, there was a bit of an age gap between her and the guys. And so she always talks about how they were like big brothers / parents for her. And she says that in not so good of a way. She says like, whenever they would get to the hotel room, like one after one, they would each come in and check on her at night to make sure nobody was in there. And like, there were a lot of them. So it was like,
kind of controlling.
Yeah, it was like controlling it. And they also talk about how she would like, they would always like be like giving her drugs all the time, and like that type of situation, which definitely was a different time. But yeah, I mean, with this type of history, you gotta take the good with the bad. There was like good things and bad things going on. So she would sneak out a lot, which is interesting because for some reason I didn't know about the marriage that young.
Well, that's a good point, because I couldn't find a date on this, but she married in 1970, and then it kind of just said that they divorced shortly after. So I mean, that could have been 1971, and that would have been before Rufus anyway. That's where Khan came from, her last name. And for some reason, I mean, no judgment or anything, but she kept his name as part of her stage name forever.
It works.
It works. Chaka Khan. That sounds pretty great.
Really good. Yeah.
It like what if she married someone later, like Bill Lewandowski, and now she's Chaka Lewandowski.
Although that kind of flows.
I just have a knack for coming up with good names. You shouldn't use my example. But yeah, something that I did not know about kind of Rufus's breakthrough hit, which was "Tell Me Something Good." I did not know that Stevie Wonder wrote that song.
I'm telling you, man, just own the 70s.
And that was 1974, which was right leading into
he was the man.
Intervisions.
74.
Yeah. Intervisions. Yeah. So that's right leading into his mid 70s dominance of just music.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's kind of scary, and that wasn't even the song that she wanted him to do. Like, that's not even the song he came to the studio with. Like, they had asked like him to come in and do a song, or some producer who did, or no, he wanted to come in and do a song with them. So he had a song, he started playing it, and like Chaka was nervous or whatever, but she kind of has like this like sense of independence and like strength. And he was like, like, what do you think of that? And she was like, I don't really like it. And so
wow.
So then he was like, huh. And like, this is like classic Stevie, like very charismatic. Like you should listen to like the songs that Stevie, I mean not songs, the stories of Stevie with women. Like, my guy is like unmatched. Also, she says that he was kind of like hitting on her, like in that time, like he was kind of like trying to make something.
No,
happen.
I say this very genuinely. If I couldn't see myself, then I would be supremely confident. And I'm not saying that I'm ugly or that blindness is funny. I'm just saying
you never got the chance to see how ugly you were.
Yeah, I mean, all insecurity around approaching girls comes with like self-conscious, like and unfortunately a lot of that is how do I look? What's good? How do I like?
Yeah,
he was like, doesn't matter, it's fine.
Yeah, because it's kind of obvious, right? Also,
yeah,
it's Stevie Wonder though. It's Stevie Wonder. He's at the height.
Oh yeah, well yeah. There's plenty of other reasons. It's not like
he's a superstar. Yeah,
very talented. Probably a sweet guy. Yeah,
yeah. What was I saying? So he's like, so this is like the line. She was like, I don't like it. He was like, oh yeah. He was like, what are you? What's your birth sign? And she was like, Gemini. He was like, oh, I got the song for you. And then he started saying,
wow.
It's like, oh, okay, I see you, Steve. Like, I see you, bro. I took out my notebook. I was like, Gemini, what sign are you?
See,
Star plays new song.
Yeah, well, and also like I wouldn't necessarily believe that story if it were a handful of other people other than Stevie Wonder. Like, like to just be able to be like, oh, okay. I mean, like, yeah, because he was just he could just crank stuff out like that,
Yeah, but yeah, it's that was kind of like the story of that song.
Okay, yeah. So then from like the next 5-6 years, like through the rest of the 70s, Rufus was releasing basically an album a year, and they were all doing well. Yeah. They were all selling plenty of records, and Chaka was for sure a part of that success, like a big part of that, especially when it came to like live performances.
Yeah, one thing is like she's an incredibly beautiful woman. So like that was one thing. Two was her voice, which we'll talk about with this album. We'll talk about how that translates to this album, but her voice, especially on those funk and like soul things, was just unmatched. Like, even her being so young, the sound was just so big. It was like there was nothing that was too high. There was nothing that she couldn't like get. There was, you know what I'm saying? It was like totally accessible, and she's like smiling while she does it. You know what I'm saying? Like her voice was incredible, and like behind that music, it was like. And like to like add on to our combo that we had last year, she is considered like the queen of funk.
Oh yeah. I actually was looking up, like I saw that too. Shout out to Wikipedia, and I saw that too, and I was looking up like, okay, how many different names are there for people? An unbelievable amount of people have name. Like there are really only a couple, like Michael Jackson and Chaka Khan and Whitney Houston, who we were talking about last week, who I still say is the queen of pop. Although when I looked it up, people were saying Madonna.
Yeah, it's definitely Madonna.
I still disagree, but that's mostly because I just haven't like listened to Madonna honestly at all.
Maybe
but anyway,
do that. Me neither. I haven't listened to it at all.
Yeah. Anyway, but it was amazing to me how many like people were considered this name and this name. Like it's crazy.
We should be the kings of let's the kings of music potting.
Kings of the podcast, just in general.
King of podcasts. That's what
Joe Rogan, get out of here. Mark Maron, see you later. Adios, man.
Yeah, Michelle Obama.
We are here. We have arrived.
No, we're the first men of podcasting.
That's right. Part of what happened between her and Rufus moving forward, like I said, they were having success, and their live performances were getting a lot of notoriety, like for being high energy and just great, just well performed music. The tensions that were arising between her and the band became really important later into the 70s, and you looked like you were about to say something.
There is a song that by her. that I remembered.
I hope you're right.
I'm every woman. This I me.
Okay, yeah.
That's her. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Was that Rufus or was that her?
That's Chaka. This kind of connects what you were saying because like this is when she's kind of like her star is rising a bit more. This is off of her 78 album. It's like the one where she's in red.
Okay, so her first solo album, I think. Yeah. So in 1978, that's when her solo career starts. She signs a deal with Warner Brothers in 78. And, as you can imagine, even if you get along with people in your band, like if you are starting a simultaneous solo career and, whether it's officially or unofficially, people are starting to refer to the group as Rufus and Chaka Khan, like, there's gonna be high tensions with that,
for sure.
And from what I read, you may know more about this. I didn't really like hear about any one incident or like any real like blow up. It was just kind of like everyone clearly saw the paths were diverging.
I think that was just kind of how it was. I don't really, if there was an incident, I didn't read about it or hear about it in any of the documentaries or anything. But she always just talks about how she didn't like how controlling they were of her.
Yeah, I didn't know that about that part of it earlier on, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it was just too much for her. She didn't like it.
Well, so then from 1979 until 1983, Rufus again releasing ton of albums, ton of work, but 3 of those albums in just those 4 or 5 years, they released without her being on them. And once again, the was it the writing is in the sand? Is that the phrase? I'm forgetting the actual word.
Writing's on the wall.
Writing's on the wall. I don't know where I got sand. There's a sand wall, and they're writing on it, and it's just very clear that things are gonna get split up. But like I think it's good that they had still. I mean, for a band, like they had a career. Like
no, that's a
72, 73 until 83. That's a career,
And they contributed. Like that's honestly that's all I ever want to do is contribute to like the canon.
Yeah.
When people talk about music in the 2020s and 2000 and I guess not 2000. I didn't do too much stuff in the 2010s, but in 2020s and 2030s and 40s, I want my name to be in there somewhere.
Right.
And however short or long that is, you can only be grateful for the amount of time you were able to like influence and inspire that many people.
Indeed. Yes. And so that's I'm really glad that happened for our sake to have stuff to go back and listen to. And I am glad to hear that at least publicly it wasn't just I hate you and you hate me and see you later. It was just like, okay, writing's in the sand, as I say. So that leads us up to 1984, and she's releasing her first, again, not her first solo album, her 5th solo album.
Yeah.
But the first one where she is now all on her own, no Rufus, just her, and that is I feel for you, and we can get to the mandatory listening.
The mandatory listen. This is the part I've been really waiting to get to in this episode because I actually really like this album. Straight out the gate, I like it. Well, when I first listened to it, didn't like it, but I was like,
wait, hold on. So when you first listened to it, you didn't like it at all?
Nah, not really.
Ooh, and then you grew to like it?
I grew to like it, but I knew it was going to do that. Like I tell you this every time. Like every time I listen to a new album, it's just hard for me to listen to and be like, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
I think that one, like I have to be used to the textures. I don't listen to 80s music like that. So when I heard, I was like, oh, this is like actually 80s, like 80s. I was like, all right.
I thought that Whitney Houston, the album, was 80s. This is like
that's why I was kind of confused. Like Whitney Houston 80s was like 80s R&B ish. You know what I mean? But it was perfect. That's the difference. Like this album isn't perfect the way that Whitney's album was. But
Whitney's album is definitely safer.
Way safe. Yeah.
And
it's as safe as you could be.
And a lot of that is because it was her introduction to the world as far as a recording artist. Chaka was very established at this point.
Yeah, and like people knew what to expect from Chaka and knew what they liked from Chaka. So it was kind of like they could like play around with things more. Whitney, they were just like, hey, here's this girl, here's this woman that can really sing really, really well, you know.
Yes. Now, similarity to Whitney's album that we talked about last week is just the amount of people that put in effort on this. There are 9 producers. There's one. There's 10 songs.
Yeah.
There's one who I briefly mentioned before, Arif Mardin.
Yeah, I mean,
and he has been mentioned on the podcast, episode 5, because he produced the song "Respect" by Aretha Franklin.
Oh.
Didn't produce that whole album that we talked about, but just "Respect."
So yeah, Arif did a lot of work with Chaka all throughout the 80s. Like, that was like they worked together a lot.
Okay. Yeah. In there. Yeah, that's good to know, and that makes sense too, because like he was definitely the main producer.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of songs where there were co-producers. There were a couple of songs where he wasn't producing and they just were. And I mean, all in all, there are 9 producers. There are even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mixers. Like, like again, there's like one guy, Lou Han. He mixed like 6 of the 10. But then, so even just on the other side of the glass, like on the board, like there's so many people in that room. There's so many people in the control room for this album, you know.
In contrast, like surprisingly, in contrast to Whitney's album that we did last week, this album actually sounds like it's supposed to belong together.
Yeah, and that's, you know, in my hook, I mentioned that quote. Like that's kind of what that guy was saying, was like, you know, Arif basically did his job, you know, even though there were so many people. Like, there was this kind of
executive music producer.
Yeah.
I listened to the first time, wasn't into it. But I could tell that I would like it. I just needed to listen to it a lot. So this is by far the album that I listened to the most. Any other album that we've done. Just because,
and I mean, and we've been listening, you know, not just once through all these, you know.
I've been listening like every album like at least 8 or 9 times. This one I probably listened to like closer to 20. Like I listened to, like I'm ready to move on. But it was great. Like I listened to it.
I can imagine,
I listened to it a lot.
Because again, thank you to everyone who's listening and watching. We don't necessarily put these out every week, but we do record them every week. So we, as of right now, we have been listening to a new album every week for 7 weeks, you know, all week each time, generally speaking. And yeah, like I felt the same way about the album as a whole. I was kind of I was like taken aback by some of the sounds at first, and I was just
Chaka even said she's like I really regret how like hard Ari went on the whole 80s thing. She's like in retrospect, it was just too much.
It was a lot, and I as did you.
If you took aliens from another country, if you took aliens from another, what do we call it? Galaxy,
planet,
that's the word. Another planet.
What's Earth again?
And was like, hey, what does the 80s sound like? Just give them this record. Just give them this CD. You'll hear the Chaka, just like all these delays, these like super synth sounds, like synth sounds where they don't even need to be synth sounds.
Yeah, just like abrasive, kind of like in your
like
face.
Yeah, like I love it on Phil. The first song, "This Is the Night."
Like, this is my night. Yeah,
coming in is just just sounds like rototoms.
Yeah.
You know, changes. It's just the 80s, you know. It's just like so 80s.
And that's the thing. Like, as did you, I grew accustomed to not only the album as a whole, but also some of those sounds. I was like, okay, I'm on board now. Like after a few listens,
it takes a while. At least for me,
it takes a while. No. It took until like yesterday, honestly. Yesterday was the first day where I was like, okay, like I'm I'm really starting to like this. And then today it got even more solidified.
Yeah. It took me like
not every song.
Weekend. Yeah, not every song, although most songs for me. The thing about the album for me that is kind of hard and something that's different from all the other albums we've done is that I can't like relax to this music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't just be
not.
like, yeah, let me get in the bed and like listen to it as I go to sleep. Nope. Like this be it's just like I can't.
Here I totally agree. Here's the great thing about what we're doing once again is not that let's be honest, like we had musical knowledge coming into this podcast. Like,
yeah, for sure.
We weren't just like, well, I don't know, I just listened to Taylor Swift, or, but we are seeing so many different types of albums already, and like different types of artists, and then different types of songs that like there's albums that we've done where you could probably like fall asleep to it, and then there's albums that we've done like this one where it's like I should probably be like driving 80 miles an hour, so it's kind of cool right. that we're seeing that like variety, I guess.
Speaking of the variety and the sounds of this album, I think that the one thing that I missed, which makes me want to listen to more Chaka music, which I did, is that there are not a lot of places where she gets to like really show off her voice. And I wonder how people like during the time like connected with it. Was this was her biggest album? Was it her biggest album because it connected to like this huge new audience that knew no idea of who she was, or was it because like I wonder how her like OG fans felt about this?
Yeah, that's interesting to think about, especially because like there was really only one kind of hit single off of, like there were 3 different songs that like got on the pop chart. And yes, and also I must say this too, I was thinking about this as I like talk about charts all the time, like with these episodes. Like we're always talking about the pop chart, but I mean that's like not the only chart. I mean there's it's significant when a song is a top 10 R&B song, but like there was only one song on this album that was a just certified banger hit, and that was it was number 3, and that was the title song, I Feel For You.
Really?
And that is interesting because who wrote that song, Aaron? Prince wrote that song. Stevie Wonder is playing that harmonica solo.
Yeah.
I gotta say that harmonica,
and I think Prince produced that too, right?
He did on his album.
Oh,
I didn't see that he produced this version, but I mean it's the same song.
Let me double check. I thought he produced it for her, like, or he produced a whole album for her. That's what it was.
A different album?
Yeah, a whole different album for her.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I could definitely see that because like they ended up like later in the 90s they toured together at one point. Yeah. So they were close for sure. But Stevie Wonder, that harmonica solo, the tone and like what he's playing, but tone of that, like it's like a chromatic harmonica, or it's not just like a
it's just
run of the mill harmonica, I guess.
Well, the difference is like when you have like a regular harmonica, you can only play in one key, and sometimes it's only pentatonic. Like the harmonic is only pentatonic. This one is like harder because there's so many different. Like you can hit every note,
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so, you have less room for mistakes. Yeah, for sure. Well, so anyway, something about what he was playing hit me in this like really nostalgic point in my heart. Like I don't know what it was because I couldn't tell you why, or like again it was kind of just generally like I'm walking through the mall about to get my hair cut, man. Like I don't know.
Right. I want to talk about some highlights of the album for me. One of my favorite songs is "This Is My Night." Like the one straight out the gate.
Okay.
Really, really like it. I don't really know what to say except it's like her, like going out. That's basically it's like a girl song. Like you're going out and going on the town, as they say. My favorite moment in the whole album is track number 2. You know what I'm talking about?
I also love track number 2, but I don't know what moment you're talking about.
there's like at the end of the song, there's like this break, and then it like comes in as like a hit, you know. He's like, da, 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 da,
yeah,
stronger than me. There's like a huge, it's like humongous how big this hit is. It's just like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I remember that, and I definitely love what really just like got me about that song was the she hits that every time. I'm just like, oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, no, that song is like great.
One of my favorites.
Number 3, My Love Is Alive. That's the one that's most reminiscent of her style before, and like one of the ones that she really gets to like stretch on, you know.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say about it, but that's
So I would say like of the first 3, like Stronger Than Before, the second one is the only one that is gonna like make my playlist. Like, I didn't like dislike 1 and 3, but even today, like even on the 10th whatever time I was listening to it, like those 2 songs, like it was still the like abrasive nature of some of those sounds and some of the da 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 da, you know. It was just I was just like, you know, getting hit in the head.
On my, like earlier I said like there's synth lines where there shouldn't be synth lines. On My Love Is Alive, it's like
yeah.
It's like, why is this doesn't even need to be here. It's like,
and then like hey, they like come back in with it like in the middle, and you're just like, hey, there it is again.
Yeah, just by itself. It's just
like a friend inviting itself to a party.
Yes. It's like me when I used to come to your house and not tell you, just knock on your door.
Well,
like, hey man, what's
that
up?
Was
like,
no, I didn't say a best friend inviting you out. Just an acquaintance.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, yeah. But
okay, now getting to the
getting
to the next part of the album, tracks 4 through 8, all bangers to me. Like this was the part of the album, like those 5 songs, like solidified it for me as like, okay, I definitely like this album.
Okay,
I'm seeing some pushback.
I love Eye to Eye, and I kind of knew that, like I heard it before. I was like, oh, I know this song. La Flame. Hard no.
See, that one took me some time to warm up to, but I actually really did warm up to it. Hey, I really did. Like there's like that
stuff is way cornier when I watch it in playback.
Yeah, it's way cooler when you just don't see it.
Yeah, no,
things
are heating up here though. Let's go.
Let's just say this: I understand why it's a hard no for you. Fly? Hey, we're trying to get through this, man. You got to go. So, because I got some 3-on-3, I'm not going to waste them.
Okay, let's get it. Yeah.
So yeah, I understand why it's a hard no for you, but it grew on me. I ended up really liking it.
Yeah. Of course, I feel for you. Now, when I heard this song, I was like, I know this song. I was like, I don't know why I know this song.
Yeah.
And then, like, I either read or heard that Prince did it. It was a Prince song, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is on Prince's self-titled album, 1979."
Yeah,
Prince, and he does this song, and I was just like, "Oh, that is where I know," because I listened to his self-titled album so much when I was in college. For some reason.
Yeah.
Like every time I was like, "All right, I'm gonna get into Prince," like I would start with that album, and like I would just be like, "Man, this is so good." I just keep listening to it.
Well, and the other thing about this song is that it was kind of like she was like the first R&B artist to have like a crossover hit with like a rapper like in the song, like Grandmaster Mel on the beginning. That was kind of like,
Chaka Khan,
you know, now it's like, oh, of course, but 1984, that was not normal.
Yeah, that's really cool that she was like there at that time.
Yeah, and that was a big hit too.
The next song, Hold Her. By the way, I feel for you definitely making the playlist. So my playlist so far is This Is My Night, Stronger Than Before, Eye to Eye, I Feel For You. That's definitely
okay. Yeah.
Hold Her is another good song. I don't remember it as much, but keep going.
Interesting thing about Hold Her is there are 2 members of Toto on that song. Steve Lukather on guitar and Steve Porcaro, both Steves, on keys. And that's not really like noteworthy because they were in Toto. It's more noteworthy because they were just on a ton of stuff. Like they were on like Thriller and just a lot of 80s, 70s, 80s LA albums. But yeah.
Another thing to note is that this is 1984, the same year that Purple Rain came out. So like Prince was huge right now. Like it's just, as big as he could get. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold Her was one of the songs where I was like, okay, I can fall asleep to this song. Like it was like wasn't so abrasive. I was like, I like
it.
It was like chill. I liked it,
Yeah.
I
would say that about the next one too, Through the Fire.
Yeah, for sure. I just can't ever hear the song how it's heard. I can never hear the original version now.
And why is that?
Through the Fire is a song that was sampled. It's a great Chaka Khan song first. And it was sampled by Kanye West, who will not go into detail about what's going on right now. But if you're listening to this from the future, just look up July 2020 Kanye West. It'll explain the whole. Just look at his tweets from July.
Yeah, for real.
July 20th, 2020. It's a lot of things going on right now.
But, I haven't even seen that.
Through the Fire was a song that was sampled by Kanye West as a single for his first album, The College Dropout.
First ever single.
Yeah, and do you know the name of the song?
Through the Wire.
Now, do you know why it's called Through the Wire?
Because he had a really, really bad, like life-threatening car accident.
Yeah.
And his jaw was wired shut, and he was like singing and rapping through a wired shut jaw.
Yeah, because he wasn't supposed to be talking, much less like rapping. And so when you listen to the song, he's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like rap, like talking through this thing, and you could tell like it's like he should stop. But that's why they call it Through the Wire. That's amazing to me. And they sample this song Through the Wire.
Well, what's really interesting though is the way that he sampled it was like very high pitched, super sped up.
Yeah.
And I just found out that just last year, Chaka Khan was on that show with Andy Cohen. I forget what it's called, but she was on this Andy Cohen show, and she was like, he asked her about the sample and like, did she know? And she was like, yeah, like he contacted me and like asked me, and he kind of like, got me like pulled at my heartstrings because he was telling me that like, her music like helped him get through hard time and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then when she heard the song and the way that he used the sample, she like hated it. And she called it stupid. And she said if he had asked her, like if she had known what he was going to do with it, she would have said no. So I found that pretty interesting because like, again, this is his debut single. Like, that's a very big part of his musical journey is having that sample. So it worked out, but apparently even as recently as last year, she was like, yeah, it's not cool.
Dang. That actually makes me sad because it
I know.
Really cool. It's a really good song. It's really cool. And
I love the Chaka version too.
The way that she influenced his life is the way that he influenced mine. You know what I mean? Like the way that song, when I learned about it and everything, I was like, I can do like whatever I want.
Getting to the end of the album here, like I said, 4 through 8 for me like might all make the playlist.
Yeah,
that's
right, yeah.
And then like 9 and 10, it wasn't that I hated them. It just I felt like if the album ended at Through the Fire and it was only 8 songs, like great, like I'd be fine.
Yeah.
Like I just felt like I didn't need the last 2 songs.
Right.
That may be a hot take. I don't know.
I don't think it's a hot take. 9, I like 9, 10. It's okay to me. It's whatever. Yeah. I mean, I hate to like rush it, but I do have to get going. But I want to get these 3-on-3s going. Overall, though, I will say about this album, really love it, and it's like the one that's made me most interested to listen more music of her, because I feel like I didn't even really get a taste of what she was doing because this was such like a pop album, and like the stuff after it and the stuff before it is not like this one. So
I'm very interested in going back and listening to Rufus and Chaka Khan, and then like her earlier solo stuff too. So let's get to 3-on-3.
Let's do 3-on-3. I got one since you stole my college dropout one, honestly.
All right. Well, I'll start so that you can sandwich it in there.
Okay.
So the repetition of her name at the beginning of "I Feel for You" that is Grandmaster Mel Mel.
Yeah.
Not the rap itself, of course, but the way that it kind of like repeats. That was actually a mistake.
Yeah. I heard
made by Arif Mardin, the producer. But they all kind of like, I guess, listened back and they were like, "Oh no, that's cool." So they kept it.
Let's keep it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then I wouldn't necessarily guess that it was a mistake. Like it really doesn't sound like a mistake. It sounds like a intentional choice.
That's how stuff sounds after you do it.
Wise words.
That sounds like just a nasty.
Bro, you should edit in that "the more you know" thing from NBC.
Mine is that her sister's name is Aka. Or Anka or something. Dang, I can't.
It's Taka.
Taka, that's what it is. It's Taka.
Taka Boom.
Taka Boon. And
Boom.
I was like, okay, so that makes sense. Like they both got named by the Yoruba and their sisters, so it's like close. And it's like, no, that's not how it happened. Basically, like she said that her sister just kind of did like a lot of the things that she did, when she was a kid. Like they kind of did similar things, and so she just kind of.
This is her younger sister?
Yeah, her younger sister.
Okay.
And so she just kind of like named herself like that. And her sister also had like a career too, and she had some success as well. So
that's good. And also, I didn't necessarily include this in 3-on-3, but her brother.
Yeah, her brother.
Mark Stevens. He's on background vocals on La Flamme or La Flame, however you say it.
Yeah.
Okay. So really, I mean, this is kind of one, but 2 and 1. This is my last one.
This light is making the top of my head look white. Sorry.
So the 2 main drummers on this album are Steve Ferroni and the
legend Steve Ferroni.
Yes, and once again John J.R. Robinson. 2 major legends. Yeah. And I would say this even if I wasn't a drummer, but especially because I am, obviously. It's amazing to me, like the credits these guys have. Steve Ferroni, he was in Average White Band in the 70s. He was for like 1 or 2 years, maybe just 1 year, he was in the Saturday Night Live house band. Then for 6 years, from 86 to 92, he toured and recorded with Eric Clapton. And then from 94 until his death, Tom Petty's death, he played with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So this guy, I mean, and that's not even talking about, that's mostly touring. That's not even talking about all the stuff he's recorded on. So he's playing drums on This Is My Night, Eye to Eye, and I Feel For You. And then J.R. Robinson is on Stronger Than Before, Hold Her, and Through the Fire. Again, he's played with countless people, but most notably he's on Off the Wall and Bad, both Michael Jackson albums.
Right.
But I mean, he's played with Michael Jackson, George Benson, Quincy Jones, Lionel Richie, Diana Ross, Steve Winwood, Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, Madonna. He's played drums on 50-plus Grammy
all
winners.
The 80s.
Yeah, I mean, he is just all over the place, and he was on a little bit of the album last week, Whitney Houston. So
yeah,
he's a through line, I think, and he will continue to be as we continue going through the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Okay, we'll definitely keep an eye on that.
So next album is All We Got to Do. It is my turn, and I usually have like kind of some choices I've narrowed down to.
Yeah.
This time I just have one.
All right.
And it is an artist that you can probably guess. It may not be the album that you're guessing, but we're going all the way to 1999, except
it's
just 1982. It is Prince's 1999.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I want to do this one, because, I mean, we could pick a lot of his to do.
The obvious one is the one where he does Feel For You on there.
Yes, which would be his second album, his self-titled album.
Yeah.
I definitely thought about that, but I wanted to start with 1999 because it's a little bit, I mean, we're not too worried about close. We went from 67 to 85 in one fell swoop. But this is just going a couple years back. Obviously, early 80s Prince connects to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And this album, with it being before Purple Rain, and with it being enough into his career, like it's after his first and second album, and
and third and fourth,
right? This is also, I think this was his fifth album, right?
So you have
For You,
first one, you have For You, then you have the self-titled, then you have Controversy or Dirty Mind. Those might be switched, and then I think you have. You have 1999.
And 1999, you know, I have plenty to learn still about Prince in general, but that album is, I mean, it's definitely a classic. That's what I'm going with. 1999 by Prince. Any last thoughts from you, Aaron?
Dan, I love you, man. I appreciate you for taking time out to do this. We are creating history by talking about history.
So, for myself in Nashville, Tennessee, and Mr. Aaron Maston in Los Angeles, this has been Mandatory Listening. Thanks for doing so. Peace.
Yeah.